Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unique Peace. I'm Janice. I'm your host. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher and self-care coach here on Long Island, New York. Today, I have Kristy. She is a Neuro Linguistic Pathways Practitioner and Coach. That's a mouthful for me. And she's from the UK. And today, we're going to learn about her story and what brings her peace. So, everybody, welcome, Kristy.
Hello, thank
How
you
are
for
you?
having me.
Yes, and so you guys are in the UK, so it's the afternoon there, so good afternoon.
It is, thank you very much.
And so you're the second NLP I've had in as many weeks.
Yeah, I was listening to your podcast with Tammy earlier, and I think there's going to be a lot of reinforcement of Tammy's message today.
That's
I
great. It's
I love
not. It's
yeah,
if it happens more than once, there's usually a reason for it, as I'm sure you've learned as I have.
absolutely. I mean, NLP it's a powerful set of tools and a brilliant way of learning to look at the world and your experience of it. So the more it gets talked about, the better.
Wonderful. So let's kind of dive into your story of what brought you to it and what you're doing with it.
Okay, what brought me to it? I have real trouble putting together a coherent sort of backstory. Everybody else seems to have this lovely narrative, a nice coherent narrative that goes from A to B to C, and here you are, and it all makes sense. And I start somewhere over here and go up here and down here and around here.
I mirror that story a lot.
There are kind of two main threads to it, I think. And one is just that I am what I now know to be an introvert. So, and I'm also very quiet and pretty shy, which is, I think, are separate things to being an introvert, although they often tend
They
to end
often go, yeah.
going with it. And I didn't understand what introversion was until quite recently, that sense of external stimulation being very overwhelming and draining. So trying to socialize in the way that extroverts do and be in busy and loud environments is in itself tiring, regardless of what you're doing in those circumstances and regardless of whether you enjoy it. I think that's pretty key. But when you are introverted and quiet and bookish in a society that favors the extroverted, the loud and the confident and the outgoing and the charismatic, you quite quickly end up feeling that there's something wrong with you, that you don't fit in, that you're an outsider, that you're other, not quite right, a little bit weird.
Absolutely. As a fellow introvert, you are preaching to the choir there wholeheartedly.
Quiet, yeah. So I think I had that going on through my whole life, that I rarely felt that I belonged. I was always trying to fit in. And, of course, when you have to try to fit in, you don't actually feel that you belong, even if superficially you might be doing pretty well at it.
Yeah.
And superficially, I was doing pretty well at it. I had, a well-paid job, and I had the husband and the child and the nice home in the suburbs, and it all looked good, but it always felt like I was an imposter in my own life. It was sort of, it wasn't that I was desperately unhappy, that it didn't, so I'm looking for that I didn't feel I deserved it. It just didn't quite feel that it was mine. I kept expecting somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, yeah, you put on a good show, but this isn't really you, is it? But there's a lot of hindsight going on in talking about that. I understand it. But I think things started to come to a head for me when my first marriage started to crumble. Well, more accurately, when I started to realize it was crumbling, and there was a very difficult and painful breakup, and that was not good. I not altogether proud of the way I behaved, and I had some very unpleasant experiences. Ended up in a good relationship and things were looking good, and then my world kind of fell apart when my son, who was by then 14, decided that he was going to live with his dad and his dad's new family.
Oh, yeah, that's a blow.
That was a blow, yes. And I spent the next, time gets away from me these days. It must have been a couple of years, sort of somewhere between rage and hurt and everything in between. And it wasn't pleasant. And I think that highlighted everything else that was wrong. There was just this whole big bag of pain and everything feeling wrong. And I actually got pretty bored of myself, of being a victim. And you can only be shouting it's not fair for so long before you get a bit bored, I think. And I started to look for ways of helping myself to feel different.
Okay.
Which, I'm a reader. I always start with books.
Yeah.
So it was off to the self-help section of the local Waterstones, basically. And I discovered that there were an awful lot of self-help books with the word fuck in the title. I had no idea.
Yes, there are. I mean, the first time I remember being in Barnes and Nobles, and there was one that says "unfuck your life," and I'm like, "They were allowed to publish that?"
I didn't think we would talk like that in this kind of world. I thought it was all love and peace, and
Yeah, no. Some of the self-help world is blunt, and in all honesty, that might be what a lot of people need.
Absolutely, I love that. But once I started doing that, I mean, you said earlier about the second NLP in as many weeks. Sometimes these things happen for a reason. So once I started looking at those things, other opportunities started to come up. I got offered the opportunity to attend an NLP practitioner course that my friend was running, her first one in her new business, seeking accreditation, and needed bums on seats. I got to do it for free.
Always a good thing.
Amazing. I had no idea what it was, but it's kind of I've just been made redundant, so it was. I'm a loose end if it helps you out. I'm always up for something different, and I absolutely loved it. I was gobsmacked by how powerful some of those tools are, and it was what I needed in terms of showing me that you can look at the world differently. You can change the way you're programmed, and that the language you're using to yourself is a brilliant place to start doing that. So that fell into place. I took my car in to be serviced and happened to pick up a leaflet for a Buddhist meditation class just down the road from me, and went along to that. And I still was sat there, and the teacher used the quote, well, holding on to anger is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
And my brain sort of went, whoa, how obvious is that? Why didn't I see it? That makes so much sense. All these things just started coming together. And it just sort of took off from there. Again, it wasn't a straight line. I ended up getting, I'd been made redundant, but I ended up getting another job, and sort of a lot of this went on the back burner. Somewhat randomly, I made the decision to take a break from drinking, and I did that with the help of a book, of course, the 28-Day Alcohol-Free Challenge. And one of the suggestions was, when you're not drinking, have a lot more time, find yourself some kind of challenge to do with the time. And they were talking about exercise mainly, but I just signed up for half marathon. I thought, I'm not doing anything else. That's more than enough sports-wise. I am a couch potato. This is above and beyond. But I randomly signed up to volunteer with a charity in the UK which focuses on listening to people who are struggling in a bid to reduce the number of people who die by suicide. And the training there brought back a lot of the NLP stuff, and the power of listening, and the need to be seen and heard. The fact that talking about how we feel completely open, honestly, and being heard as you do that, rather than advised or responded to,
Yeah.
can make such a big difference. And you start to hear yourself when you do that.
Yeah.
And somewhere amidst that tangle, I ended up making the decision to train as a coach. And then we have it, really. Which is a really, really long-winded way of saying it was pretty random and very lucky.
That is beautiful, actually. So as you got to the point where I'm going to train and I'm going to be a practitioner and a coach, and how has that helped you define peace personally for yourself? How do you define peace, and how has your coaching practice helped you do that?
I think peace for me is all about being at ease in my own skin and in the moment, being able to accept who I am and where I am at any given point. Not necessarily liking or being able to say, yeah, this is the best thing ever, but saying, yeah,
This is
I'm
where I'm
here.
at.
This
Yeah.
is where I'm at. I am here. This is me. I trust myself to deal with it. And it saves so much mental and emotional energy and noise when you can do that.
Agreed. And as you dive into your personal definition of peace, how do you personally find peace?
Find peace. I think this is really interesting because I'm not sure. I don't think there is a way. Some people seem to have the way for them, something that is always right and their absolute go-to. And for me, I think part of finding peace is about recognizing your own needs at any given time, and the fact that they're not always the same, that you're not always in the same place needing the same thing. But by and large, meditation and mindfulness help a lot, even if it's just taking those few moments to focus on the breath, look at a tree, whatever it is, and just be that, bringing you down, allowing you to step out of your thoughts rather than be swept away by them. That makes a huge difference. I mean, there are things that always help: reading and crafting. I love a bit of crochet. I've started to learn knitting, things like that. Sometimes they distract you from what's going on rather than they allow you to feel peaceful rather than helping you to find peace. I think maybe there's a difference.
I would agree that there's a little bit of a difference, because my mom is a crocheter. She does crochet. I have a friend who crochets, and it, for them, is a stress reliever. So they're at peace when they do it. I don't necessarily think that's what brings them peace. I mean, if you're giving them a sharp instrument, if you talk to them wrong, they might stab you with it. You never know.
And it's quite hard to do damage with a crochet hook, but look out for the knitting needles. I think.
Oh, the needles I stay away from. I had a grandmother who was a crocheter and a knitter, and when she had the needles, I'm like,
yeah,
sit over there, because if she was angry knitting, you could tell. It was like, and there is a difference between, it's like somebody, I don't know if you experience it yourself as somebody who crochets, but I can tell my mom is mad by how fast she whips out a blanket. Like,
love that. Angry crochet. Brilliant.
But I agree. You find peace in doing it, but I don't know if it brings someone peace, if it brings her actual peace. I think more like spending time with the animals brings her actual peace.
Yeah, I mean, being in nature for me, I live in South London in the UK, and there's not a lot of nature going on, but I'm lucky to have a sort of quite a wild park nearby, and to just wander through there and just allow the noise of the city to fade a little. I find that does bring me peace a lot. And I do a bit of running, and again, I think sometimes it's just when you're in pain, your mind goes to a different place, which feels peaceful. It's kind of the near-death experience thing in my case, perhaps, but it does it does seem to free up my mind in a strange way, and I find it quite meditative.
Meditative?
Yes, that one, thank you. Too many words in that word.
No, it's okay. So when you are doing things like you said, mindfulness and meditation, do you find that that brings you peace? And what are some of the ways you get into your mindfulness? That's that because that's, I think, very poignant and different for all of us.
Yeah. How to get into it? It's a lot of it is about coming back to the breath, I think. And that old favorite in meditation, it's just what is happening for me right here, right now, in my body, in my head, where am I? And just being able to focus on the breath, being able to unclench the jaw, drop the shoulders, and it and just feel everything sort of aligning and taking that when you take that breath in and feel the space in your body and everything can expand a little, and then you exhale, everything settles. There is just that. It feels like an almost complete realignment, and maybe it isn't something that lasts, but just in that moment, it feels, I've got this. I'm okay.
And that is a lot of the battle too, especially when you have a racing mind or you're like and you're trying to figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, and recognizing that, those thoughts that are going round and round and round, they are happening to you. They are not you. People say they can't meditate because their minds are too busy, which always that makes me clench my jaw and raise my shoulders. It's For me, meditation is not about emptying your mind. It's about being able to focus your mind.
Yeah.
So it's on a mantra, on the breath, on something in particular you want to focus on. It's not about empty. You can't empty your mind. That's called being unconscious, I think. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that's the way to go, right? Have a nice sleep. But being able to bring the focus you want in your mind so that rather than you can watch the thoughts go by rather than being swept away by them. They're still
Yes.
there. They're happening. Don't fight them, because the more you try and push them away, the stronger they push back.
They're gonna come in and they're gonna wanna stay. I had
Whereas
a
you
lovely
go,
guest. Exactly. I have a lovely guest, and he explained it much like I did, but he added a key piece.
"Mm,
And I always, when I teach meditation, I say, you're going to let them filter in. So it's going to go in, and you're going to pretend you're like a teenager and let them go right out the door. And he explained it in a lovely way. He said, you open the front door, you open the back door, you let the thoughts filter through, but you don't give them tea along the way.
what timing?"
I
Sorry.
know, that's awesome. So I am a big proponent of when people say, I can't meditate. I'm like, and I know as someone who used to say that, I was like, no,
Me too.
anyone can meditate. It's a matter of sitting down and not going into the overthinking mode or because once we start to overthink and we entertain, we stop meditating and we start going and we've lost what we were doing.
Yeah, I love the idea that the more often during a period of meditation you realize that you had got caught up in your thoughts, the better you're doing, because the more you're stepping out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I found that really reassuring when I read that somewhere, that, that's a good sign. If you keep every few seconds thinking, I was lost in thought again, that's brilliant. You're bringing yourself out of it. You're getting better.
You're getting better, yeah, and you just start out with a couple minutes and then go longer and longer. People think that they have to sit there for an hour, a half hour, and no, it can be a challenge. It can be a really challenging thing to do. Just a
So me
couple.
go to sleep and I end up with pins and needles, and I'm not good at a long meditation. Maybe
No,
one day I'll get there, but right now I don't feel I particularly need to.
right, and there's different ways to meditate as well.
Hmm.
You can meditate folding the laundry. I tell people that all the time. Meditate while walking. There's actually a specific walking meditation. where you focus on each step in front of the other. It's like my foot is up, my foot is down, my foot is up, and I have now made a step. And that to me is the ultimate in mindfulness, because you can't focus on anything else when you do that meditation properly. And then next thing you know, you got 5 miles in, so it's too cold.
Cool, yeah. That sounds amazing. I've not done it quite that intensely, but it's very similar to what I experience in running sometimes.
Yes.
I'm just going to put one foot in the other. I need to be aware of what my body is doing and just focusing on that. And there's all sorts of stuff that's going through my mind, but it can do its own thing. And I am focused on
the running.
What's here now for my body. And we don't do that very much. We spend a lot of time complaining about our bodies and being disappointed in them, but very little going, wow, look what my body's doing.
Exactly. Why is this happening?
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that can happen? Well, how much is going on in there that, I've decided to lift my foot. What's happening? And my body's making sure that the blood is going around and that the air is circulating and that muscle is doing that and that tendon is doing that. Wow.
Yeah, very much so. Wow. I agree with you. And so in all these tools that you use in your practice and personally, how do you feel that helps you help others find peace? How do you help them find that peace?
Okay, well, I think of myself as quite a purist sort of coach, in that I offer very little in the way of a framework or tools on the whole, because I think everybody has their own answers. And the point of coaching for me is to help people find their own answers, their own way.
Absolutely.
And to do that, you have to get to know, like, and trust yourself more, especially when you are used to trying to fit in and pretending to be, well, a lot of the time not consciously, but basically pretending to be somebody you're not, putting on that fake persona in order to fit in, not be noticed, not be rejected, pass for normal, however you like to describe it.
That's a hard thing to do.
You generally get found out, I find. But when you are doing that all the time, I think you lose that sense of connection with who you truly are, and certainly a sense of appreciation for who you truly are. And there comes that sort of point when you look in the mirror one morning and go, I don't know who that I am anymore. Who is this looking back at me? What's going on? How did I get here? Is this what I want? And what I offer through coaching is a chance to explore that. And I mean, NLP is a whole set of tools. It's not one approach.
Right.
Most of them, as it's Neruo Linguistic Programming. The programming sounds very scary and sinister, and it's not at all. We have been programmed through life. Our experiences, the treatment we've received from others, and the outcomes of all that have created our own little algorithms. When I experience this, and this, and I react like this, the outcome is either good or bad. So either I'm going to keep doing that or I must never do that again. And it becomes our programming. And starting to bring conscious awareness to that is the first step towards being able to change it, and recognizing, the words we use to ourselves and to others are the only way we have of sharing reality and of defining our reality. So when you start to change those, you can start to change what's happening for you. And so for me, coaching, I only offer one-to-one coaching sessions, and that is first and foremost a chance for a complete and utter brain dump. Just getting what is going on in here out for a moment changes it. It gives you a moment of respite because you've not got it all going on there. But just speaking it can change how you see it and how you feel about it and how it looks. Especially when you don't have to worry about somebody going, well, you know what you should do, or, oh yeah, my auntie's friend's sister had that, and what, only it was worse, but what they did was, and
Right.
we do it with the best of intentions. In the course of normal conversation, we try and help people. We want to say something that is going to make a difference, that's going to help them, that's going to reassure them. But very often by giving advice that we feel would work for us, or by comparing them to another situation, it just leaves us feeling misunderstood, more alone than we were before. And you stop doing it. Whereas when you've got a safe space to just let it out and start looking at it, and with somebody who's going to say, "Oh, I noticed you used that word," or you said this here, and then you said that before. How does that come together? And did you? It allows a process of exploration that is not how we normally deal with ourselves.
And do you find that that brings peace to those you're helping and serving?
Yes, not necessarily immediately, because I'm not a fan of the whole idea of, this caterpillar to butterfly transformation. I think we don't start as caterpillars. We're always a butterfly. But, there is a growth process, an evolution in our understanding of ourselves. And the more that you can recognize the good in you, the more you can be at peace with, forgive yourself for what's happened in the past. And the more you can trust yourself to know that you can cope with whatever is going to happen, the more at peace you're going to be.
I agree with that. So, and I'm sure most of our listeners would be in agreement with that. And it's a new way to look at finding peace.
It's a new way. I don't know. I think, it's not going to work for everybody. I think that's important to say, because we're all different. We all find our own ways. And there may be people listening go, "Well, that all sounds very vague and abstract. I need a process. I need somebody to tell me how to do this." And that's fair enough. If that's how you function, then my approach won't be right. But I do believe we have our own answers. Your answer might be that you need a more supportive framework, that you want some instruction about how to move forward. But for other people, just being given that breathing space to learn to trust themselves and find their own way forward in ways that are right for them can make a huge difference.
That is very helpful. I mean, we are all different. I can get my words out. And that's the key to finding peace. There's no right way or wrong way for anybody. I just think it's a good perspective and a new way of considering it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think it is very helpful, because sometimes, again, as you and I have discussed in this conversation, just talking it out might help. And at the same time, when I not even realize what's in our heads that's coming out.
Yeah, people can have very different stories playing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that never ceases to amaze me. And I notice it in people, not just in clients' conversation, but in general.
Mm-hmm.
The things people will say about how they view themselves on the one hand, and then they will talk about something that they have achieved or that's happened, and they will not see how completely at odds those two things are. I had a client once who was absolutely convinced that they would never find another job because they had never stayed anywhere long enough. They were too fickle. Their CV looked terrible. No employer was going to think they were worth hiring. Too unreliable, etc. We talked a bit more, and they happened to mention that they had been in their last job for 7 years.
That's good. As somebody with an HR background, that's good.
Exactly. It's a long time, right? But our stories about ourselves can get so embedded that we almost give up on ourselves. We're going to be beating yourself up is one of the biggest noises in your own head, isn't it? It's one of the biggest obstacles to finding peace. And when you can start to actually challenge your own stories, some of them are going to be true, some of them aren't, and you can rewrite them. I think this is something Tammy talked about in the previous podcast. You can bring different perspectives to bear. You can reframe your stories to allow you more peace and less of that noise of a million inner critics beating you up.
Right. And we're usually the worst critic, beating ourselves up. That's something that I learned through my English. I got my master's in creative writing, and as a writer, you have to have that tough skin. You're gonna get you're gonna get a lot of rejection letters. You just are.
Yes.
Nobody's gonna be harder on you than you are on yourself.
Absolutely. And every single one of those rejections is about somebody else's taste, somebody else's subjective assessment of a market.
Exactly.
Almost none of it is about you as an individual or your talent.
No.
But it's so easy to get caught up in it, right?
Exactly. It is. And so using something like that as an example, what is in your toolbox, Kristy, to help someone find peace or recenter really quickly, like 15 minutes? Like you put them in that situation of where your client who's nobody's going to hire me, or someone who's getting the rejection letters, and knowing that it's usually us that are hardest on ourselves. How do you guide someone to kind of bring it back into perspective?
Well, it's always going to depend on the individual and the exact things that they're saying that they've told me. But very often what will come up is you'll notice a lot of generalizations going in their language. Nobody will like me or hire me or want me. I always fail. This will never happen. I could never be like that. And when you start challenging that language, you can make people start to think differently about themselves. So you always fail. Does that mean you've never succeeded at anything? And you can see the and even if they'll only offer you one grudging example, it's an example they were wrong. And once our brains want to prove us right.
Yep.
So when you have one of these deeply held beliefs, your brain is constantly looking for evidence, going, right, this is what we think, right? We need the world to conform to this. Okay, let's go and find you evidence. Whereas when you start chipping away at that, brain goes, oh, hang on, not so sure anymore that this is what you want to know. Maybe you want to see some other stuff. I'll show you some other stuff then. And it starts to open the door to seeing yourself more truly.
And that is kind of a guiding post from what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing is a guiding post to leading to that self-realization and that self-actualization to maybe help reprogram and rewrite that story.
Yeah. I mean, very often you don't need the whole process. You just need to start it. Because once you can undermine the belief that is blocking everything else, and your brain starts to go, oh, hang on, so now you're asking for information and evidence about this other possibility. Well, the change starts to happen more naturally. You become more open to it.
And on that note, do your own personal journey, going back to the beginning for a minute, that happened gradually and then it suddenly came together for you?
Don't think I'd go quite that far. Definitely still very much a work in progress. But yes, I find that I have exposed an awful lot of the stories I had about myself, and that's not to say that they don't still crop up sometimes. If you've spent, I was going to give a number then, more than 4 decades, and I'm allowing for myself being quite a bit older when I started that. If you spent more than 4 decades believing something about yourself, you are unlikely to completely dismantle it overnight.
Oh, no. It is a process for sure.
It is. Even when you have that breakthrough moment, that incredible insight where you go, "Wow, but maybe this isn't true." And you think it was never going to be the same again, game changer. It's all good now. You'll still settle back into those old patterns, especially in times of stress. We resort to the easiest option. So those old patterns will come back. So I think what has come together for me on my journey is recognizing that, which has helped me to beat myself up a lot less, because I was thinking, I see that now, so I can change that, and everything's great. And then a bit later, you realize I was stuck back in that same rut again. And I failed. I'm not good at this. I can't possibly be a coach because I'm in a shit place. And they think, hang on, I'm just having a bad day. It's just a bad time. And I have reverted to those patterns. And I know they're not true. And I know this will pass. And I will climb out of this rut and move forward. And that is really the best that we can keep doing. And it gets easier every time.
I love that. It gets easier every time, because it's a one day, one step, one moment at a time process. It sounds like it can definitely be that life-altering process, just one step, one moment, one day at a time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as if we're going to end up perfect somehow. You're not.
No.
Again, it's this whole butterfly, caterpillar to butterfly thing. The idea that somehow we can suddenly transform into what we want to be, what we're meant to be, what we should be. And I mean, even if that whole premise were true, wouldn't it be a bit dull that you suddenly get there and, oh, here I am, I'm perfect. What shall I do today?
I don't feel there's that we will ever be perfect, but we will be always evolving one step at a time. And it's like, for those of us who are going and living we're introverts, and we live in that quiet world, and we get exhausted and we feel like imposters, that one moment, one step, one day at a time is closer to just being, it's like, this is who I am, this is where I am, this is what I have to do to get through today, or I don't have to do this today because I choose not to. There, it's no fun if we're perfect, because then we're not learning.
Exactly. And I have a friend who says, I'm not my finished product, and the fun is in the making.
No, we are not a finished product. I agree with your friend. We are not finished products by any means. So I agree.
Yeah. And it's an adventure, taking each of those steps.
And is there anything in addition that you feel you want to note on peace?
I think maybe that I'm not sure we're supposed to always feel at peace. I think perhaps it's easy to get frustrated when we don't, and you work so hard for it, and yet you fail to achieve this zen-like state of absolute calm. And
oh, I don't know if that ever happened. I know Buddhist monks feel it all the time.
No, I mean, I've mentioned my love of the F-bomb, and I tend to use it quite a lot. That I am not necessarily the calmest person you're going to meet, but to be able to access a peaceful state when you recognize the need for it. I think that's what really matters.
Agreed. So I'm going to put you back in the green room. And I want to thank Kristy for joining us, taking time out of her lovely afternoon and joining us here in the States in our lovely morning. I'll be right back.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation.
So thank you to Kristy. I love the conversation, and it makes me want to learn a little bit more about NLP, having 2 in a row. So maybe we should all kind of check that out. I highly recommend it. And if you are trying to reach Kristy, take a look in the info section. You can find her website there. She's always ready for a coffee chat or a tea chat. And on Wednesday, I will be having Spencer Jones on to talk about peace. He is a youth minister, and he's going to share with us how he brings peace to teenagers. So thank you, and I look forward to talking to you then.